Welcome back. If you aren't already following Naked, please take a minute to do so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Each follow means so much and it actually helps a lot. If you have more than just a minute, it would be absolutely incredible if you could leave a review and maybe even share an episode with a friend. I am relatively new to the pod world, especially new to the things that are important in the podcasting world. And apparently reviews and follows are up there on the list of importance. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Welcome to Naked, where stories unfold. I'm your host, Janelle, a once former pastor's wife who exchanged small town living for a nomadic life. The unexpected change in our life led my husband and our 4 kids to traveling the world. From years of being rooted in our small town to the thrill of wandering the world, our story has been anything but ordinary. On our journeys, we met amazing people, learnt their way of life, and heard their unique stories, which has led me to understand the profound impact of shared experiences. In each episode, we explore moments of transformation, guided by one single question: is there a time in your life when everything changed? We invite ordinary storytellers like yourself to share the often unexpected turns in life. So grab a seat and settle in. This is the Naked Podcast. A few months ago, our daughter Kilea graduated from high school, and all she wanted for her grad was to see Broadway musicals. So thankfully, we were living in the London area at the time, and there is no shortage of shows in London. If you know anything about London and Broadway musicals and live theater, there is so much to choose from. So the hard part for her was actually choosing which musicals to see. So she had narrowed it down to a couple, and then we surprised her with one, which was going to see Wicked. And she knew very little about the actual storyline of this musical, but oh my goodness, from the moment it started, it was so captivating. We happened to get second row seats from the front, so we had an amazing view. The cast was incredible. Everyone just honestly, it was breathtaking. The show was just so beautiful. And afterwards, Key's like, I would really like to meet some of the cast. So we walked around the building. We were able to find some of the cast that was leaving out the side, and we're able to meet up with one of the cast members who played Wizard of Oz, played by Michael Stevens. So we got to chatting with him and learned a little bit about each other. And before we knew it, we were in full swing conversation. And I was like, do you want to join me on my podcast? And he was like, yes. To my delight, I found out later on that he actually hosts his own podcast. So he'll tell more about that in this episode. But I hope that you enjoy this podcast. He is extremely inspiring. His voice is so soothing and so calming. I just feel like I could listen to him talk all day long. But it was such a pleasure to have him on the podcast and hear about the moment in his life when everything changed. And I so hope that you enjoy this episode. Thanks for being here. Well, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so thrilled today to have my guest here today. The one beautiful thing about traveling, which I mentioned many times on this podcast, is meeting amazing people around the world. A few months ago, my daughter and I had an opportunity to go see Wicked, which I had never seen and didn't know much about. And at the end was like absolutely blown away by the show. It was just incredible, but got to meet some of the cast members. So as my daughter and I left, we kind of walked around the outside and realized, oh, the cast is kind of hanging out over here, and had the privilege of meeting Michael, who is my guest today. And I'm so thrilled to have you. You did such an incredible performance, and I just was delighted to meet you afterwards and then to find out that you actually also host your own podcast.
Yeah, yes, I do my own podcast quite often. I'm a bit of a mad podcaster, and I always think that I know when I started doing a podcast that people said to me, all right, I'll do it as a favor. And I think that actually it's a favor that needs to be returned. So when you said to me, will you do my podcast? I thought, "Well, okay, let's see. And
Mm.
it's fairly extraordinary, is it, doing it from the other side of the world, I would think.
It is, yes, it is. It's amazing that we can still connect and still have these kind of conversations, and the brilliancy of technology, even though it can be tricky, as we both have talked about. It's an amazing way to meet people and to get to know people and to weave people into our lives in the most unique ways, I feel. Yeah. So as we jump in,
So what should we talk about?
what should we talk about? Well, before we get jumping into it, maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you're doing, where life has you at this point.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been an actor, and that's it. I've just about spent my entire life being an actor. I studied law with the idea of becoming a lawyer, and then at the age of 20, I fell into acting. I just
Mm.
happened to do something at the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland, which somebody saw, and they said, "Would you like to do a radio series?" And I said, "Yes." And I rang my dad and said, "I don't think I'm going to be a lawyer, Dad." And ever since then, that's all I've done. I've just
Wow.
acted. So it's been one job after another for most of my life. I'm married. I've got married around that time. In fact, when I was 22, we got married. We had children very quickly. I have two children. I have four grandchildren. And somehow, by just playing and pretending to be other people, I've managed to make a living. And I'm
Wow.
always surprised by it.
That's amazing. That's very inspiring. I think sometimes when people look at the world of arts, it can be a big feat thinking, okay, can I make a living in the world of arts? And it's really inspiring when you find people that have lived that and have been like, it's been amazing. Somehow you made it this far.
Yes. I mean, I don't really know how. I wouldn't describe myself as being terribly hardworking. I've never thought of myself as being a hard worker. I just sort of I do my best, you know.
Yeah.
I put work in when I'm really keen on a project, but generally the idea of actually creating a career or pursuing a career or trying to make things happen, I haven't done that at all. I've
Mm,
absolutely sat back and sort of gone, well, I'll wait and see what happens. And amazingly, constantly people say, "Would you like to do this?" And I say, "Yeah, that would be great." So in fact, I've jumped all over the place. My career has taken me in theatre from the Royal Shakespeare Company to pantomime. You know, so
wow.
I mean, two extremes really, or some might say exactly the same thing. Who knows? If you've seen some of the productions of the Royal Shakespeare Company, but and I've done television. I've done from improvised television. I've done comedy. I've done drama. I've done all sorts of things, and it's been fairly constant, and quite a lot of radio, which I enjoy
Hmm.
doing. It's very instant. I think that's probably why I like podcasting because you sort of come together and do the thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's done. And working on radio is very like that. So
Hmm.
I enjoy the process of walking into a studio with a script. You record it. You may have a couple of goes at it, but that's about it. And then there you are. It's done. It was
It's done.
decisions made on at those moments. Really, that's I quite like that process. Yes.
Wow. Do you have a favorite
What led
project?
you to to go all over the world? Do I
Oh
have a
my
favorite
goodness.
project? Well, it's very difficult. That it's very difficult to talk about favorite projects because usually they're the ones that nobody even noticed. I
Hmm.
think so. All the things that I've done that people, particularly in this country, in Britain, would recognise me for and would know, uh, they're not necessarily the ones that I most enjoyed, or in fact
Hmm.
took up most of my time. So I've done theatre productions that hardly anybody came to see, and I loved doing them. I had a
Hmm.
fantastic time. And I've also done television programs that went out once and then were never seen again. And as far as I'm concerned, they were the best things I've done.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. It's the things that yeah, it doesn't have to be necessarily something that somebody gives you a lot of accolade for. It's like, no, this thing that I did was my best work and I loved it. No matter doesn't matter who saw it. It was still some of your best work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're always not necessarily trying to chase. I mean, I think most actors, when people think about being an actor or doing something, you think to yourself, well, you must be aiming for either notoriety or fame of some sort of recognition. So people will know who you are. That will help you with your work. But actually, there are a lot of actors who go through their entire career, and most people don't really know who they are. They
Hmm.
certainly never know their name. They might say,
Right.
"Oh, well, I think I recognize you from something," or "You were in that," or "He's the actor who did that part. You'll remember." And people can make a very good living and have a very good time doing that. And you don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be bothered by walking down the street and people shouting and screaming at you, which
Right.
never lasts very long anyway. I've done
Yeah.
some projects in my life that made me very noticeable for a very short time.
Hmm.
People get very excited about something that's on the television, and for a short periods, people would make a fuss about it and would stop me in the street, and
Hmm.
that very quickly fades. But
Hmm.
as does anything, you don't look the same, you change. So
Yeah.
I think the idea of actually, was I ever chasing fame or was I ever chasing notoriety? I never was, I think. I was
Hmm.
always chasing work.
Hmm. That's really
Mm.
beautiful. I wonder if that's where the projects have come because you're not striving for something, you just are. And so you're just doing the thing that you love, that you love to take part in taking over a character and being that character. It wasn't about trying to climb the ladder and have your name be, in big
Yes.
lights. It was like I actually love just the arts and doing this, and that's where fulfillment came.
Yeah, yeah, the job's the thing. It's almost to paraphrase Shakespeare. It's actually, people would say, "Do you want to do this?" And you would be excited by the project, and you would think, "Oh, that sounds fascinating. I'd love to do that." Or I've never done that sort of thing. It's something new, and it's another thing that I'd like to try.
Hmm.
So I very rarely have I repeated myself. I very rarely do things. At the moment, I'm playing, as you know, because you came to see it. I'm playing the
Hmm.
Wizard of Oz in Wicked in the West End, and I've never done a major musical in the West End before.
Wow.
So this is my first foray into that area. But I've
Wow.
done plays in London, but never a musical. And
Wow.
a lot of people that I know came to see it and said, "Oh, I didn't know you could sing." So it's very strange to have that sort of I mean, I don't know. I like being lots of things. I like being surprising people.
Hmm. And did you grow up singing, or is that something you just found in life through just being, existing, and acting?
No, I did grow up singing. Yeah, I grew up singing. My father loved to sing and sang all the time and
Hmm.
encouraged me to sing. And I had two brothers, one older, one younger. My younger brother likes to sing, but my older brother, I don't think I've ever heard him sing. So I think I caught it from my father. He was the one who would sing all the time. And in fact, he had a sort of he liked to be an entertainer. He enjoyed the process of, I think he regarded himself as an entertainer, although he was in fact a lawyer. So,
Wow.
but at weekends, he would be doing shows, just any show he could, anywhere. He would be performing. He loved performing. And from him, I developed, I suppose, the real trick of being an actor is not to be scared of it. It's not to be
Hmm.
frightened that doing something will make you look foolish, or in fact you'll do it wrong. That you'll
Right.
get it wrong. That doesn't. Uh, the best way is to not be worried about that at all, or in fact
Hmm.
embrace it, to enjoy the process. That in fact the thing is slightly risky. It might all go wrong. You might forget everything, or you might fall over, or who knows what's going to happen. And that has to become something that you pursue because you enjoy it, not
Hmm.
something that you are terrified might happen and are trying to avoid. So I don't mind it at all. In many ways, most of the memorable, really, really memorable things that happen to you on stage or in front of any audience are when things go wrong.
Hmm.
And they're the things that when you look back on your career, you go, oh, that was fantastic. It was amazing, wasn't it? Because nobody's going to shoot you for it. You're not, it's not that risky. It's just
Hmm.
people might go, oh, that was disappointing.
Yeah.
So it's not that important. I think it's important to people. I'm very keen on the idea that the arts are very important.
Yeah.
I think that for the development of humanity, development of young children, I think arts are absolutely crucial in their life. And to not have
Hmm.
the arts in your life, I think is a great loss. If
Yeah.
and quite often when it comes to cutting budgets or taking money away from something, the first thing that people say is, well, we don't really need theatre. We
Hmm.
don't really need plays.
Hmm.
We certainly don't need poetry. I mean, that would be ridiculous. Poetry and sculpture and those sort of things. You just go, well, yes, you do. You really
Hmm.
do. I think it's absolutely crucial in life. And
Hmm.
what young people gain from experiencing theatre, from taking part in it, from learning the courage to stand up in front of people and not be frightened of a crowd of people and the ability to talk in front of them. I'm not saying that everybody's going to become an actor or they're not all going to become the greatest actor in the world, but they are, I think, going to learn from that. And they're going to
Hmm.
learn the ability to, acting is a very collaborative art. It requires people to work with other people, not just on stage, but off stage, everybody plays their part, and it's
Mm,
absolutely crucial that to learn that as a young person and to experience that will see you through all sorts of things. It will see you through life, I think. So
mm-hmm.
I'm very very keen on promoting the arts as something that is well worth funding. It's well worth public money. I think it,
Yeah,
it shouldn't just be left down to does it make money, because
right.
quite often you can't tell where it's making money, but actually it will make money eventually. I always think
Yeah,
down the
yeah.
road.
I think that's amazing, and it's so easy as we grow into adulthood to forget about the artistic, the creative side. I can think of many times I've been in conversation with friends who are like, I don't know how to, I'm not creative, and yet we're all born like creative. And you think, look at a child who's drawing; they're not thinking about their inability to draw it perfectly. They're just like exploring. They're making color and paint and strokes and acting
Mm,
and embodying characters because there's no limitations. Nobody's telling them to do it a certain way. They just are creative. And as
no,
adults, we
and
can lose that.
you asked me, could I sing? Did I sing when I was young? And I think that being told, well, just sing. You can do it. And
Mm-hmm.
children sing, and they're not particularly concerned about how they're sounding. If they get
No.
to teenagehood, and boys' voices break, and that becomes a very difficult thing to overcome, and girls become sort of self-conscious. Do I look stupid? Do I look silly doing this? Am
Yeah.
I as good as someone else? And a lot of people just stop. They just stop singing, and
Yeah.
it's a great shame because again, singing is a thing that, I'm absolutely of the opinion that the whole this I'm tone deaf. That a lot of people say, well, I can't, hit a note. I don't know, can't tell the difference, and it's just not true. It's
Mm-hmm.
just something you need to practice. It's like
Yeah.
anything, if I can't kick a football. Well, have you ever kicked a football? No.
Right.
Well, then of course you can't.
Yeah.
It's bound to be the case. But if you kick a football a few times, once you've kicked it a few times, you go, oh, I see. If I kick it
Yeah.
this way, if I kick it that way, it's exactly the same with singing.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you will discover your voice, and everybody has one.
Yeah. Yeah. Just tuning it. That's all it is. Just tuning to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's very inspiring. I have not met many people your age that are in the world of arts. It's just like it's fascinating. I'm just like I have a couple kids that love acting, and my one daughter wants to go to school in London and just like loves the world of arts and acting and singing and creating, whether it be editing films or and it's so
Mm.
inspiring to hear somebody who's living it, who's lived it, and it's been a beautiful experience. It sounds like for you.
Yeah, what's exciting, I think, particularly for young people, is I have no idea where it's all going to go. I have no idea
Mm,
what it's going to develop into. But I do believe that the fundamental skills of acting will always be the same. That
mm,
actually an ability to tell people stories and to make
yeah.
people believe them, or believe that what you're saying is genuinely coming from you, that
Mm,
making it your own. I think those skills will always be there and will always be necessary. So
mm-hmm.
it's whether it becomes AI assisted or television dies, who knows what's going to happen? And cinema stops and we all go down to just small sound bites. I don't know which way it will go, but I always think that actually the thrill of live performance will never disappear. You can't
Mm,
replace it with something.
no.
Well, now, having said that, of course, ABBA have done that. They have basically put a show on where they're not there, and everybody goes along and sees it as if they're watching something live. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the world
Mm,
will become that, but I don't think so. I doubt it.
yeah. No, I think there's something special about it's like having a book on your Kindle versus holding a book in your hands. Yeah, something about being in
Yeah.
like in experiencing that, like being in a seat, and seeing everybody, seeing all of you sing and just the charisma that's happening. That's
Yeah.
not something that you can computer generate. It's something that happens amongst the people because their hearts are connected because it is a communal like you're working together and you can feel that when you take in those spaces and sit in it.
Mm.
It's like, oh, this is the magic, this is the good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is so exciting. Well, before we
Yeah.
carry on,
Yeah.
what
I
what
completely agree.
what are you drinking today? Glass of
Well,
red?
I'm drinking a South African South African red wine.
Ooh,
So
that
how full of the world are we? Yes, I'm drinking
right.
my wine from red of Pinotage, which is very tasty. But it's what it's gone. It's nine. It's gone 9 o'clock in the evening here, so that's fair enough.
That is
And it's
fair.
my one night off, so I'm
Um,
allowed, I think.
I'm so glad I got you
Yeah.
on your one night off. That's
And you're
amazing.
drinking?
Earl Grey tea with vanilla.
Nice.
So I'm in Canada. I think I told you I came back to Canada
Hmm.
because my dad was in the hospital. And so I came back very quickly. And today we happen to have the first snowfall.
Oh, wow. Yes. Um, second, the second largest country in the world, Canada. There we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's all I know about it, really. It's um, it's um, it's very interesting. And the rest of the, I think much of the world is very ignorant about Canada. We just don't know
Hmm.
anything about it. We know
Hmm.
everything about America, and yet the neighbor above, which is an even larger country,
Yes.
is largely ignored. And
Mm.
maybe that's deliberate. Maybe they like it that way.
Hmm. We're quieter over here in Canada. I feel like we're not as I think well as a whole we're quieter people, but yeah, and so we don't. I mean, people have asked me, so like, do you guys like have like dog sleds to take you to? And I'm like, no, we don't live like that. We have cars and like we have homes and you know. No, we do have
Yeah.
snow. It's Canada is cold. It can be cold in the wintertime especially, but it's been very
Hmm.
nice since we arrived here. It's just been today we had some first bit of snowfall, which is some people welcome it openly. I'm more of a warm girl. I like the sun, so I prefer no snow.
Yeah. Good. Good. I feel
Yes,
as if I'm wearing the right sort of jumper then.
yeah, it's perfect.
Here we've just basically had, uh, yeah. Well, we're just about to have the clocks go back, so we're going to that dark period where
Ah,
right through the winter you see very little sunshine, and when the sun's up, so are the clouds, so you
okay,
don't see a lot of sunshine, and
I got it.
I'm going to miss it, I have to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so for in London. Do you guys? Is it mostly the winter for you? Is just it's just overcast for a few months.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
overcast and drizzle. Uh,
Okay.
I think that's why, don't they say that the American Indians or the Inuits have a thousand words for snow, and I
Hmm.
think in English that's why there are so many different ways to describe rain.
Hmm. Yeah, that's sure. Comes in all forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am so
Oh
delighted that
yes.
I'm so delighted that you said yes to being here today. I always feel so honored when people feel open and want to share a bit of their story. I think I don't know if you've listened to the one of the first podcasts that I did. It was a bit of a jump for me because I'm not typically somebody who likes lights and cameras. I'm not a front row girl. I'm always the one that's I'll clean up the back. I'll do the stuff in the background. But I had a conversation with my grandma about her story and she shared with me a bit of her life and I was like, gosh, grandma, if I had known these things, like I would have felt so less alone in my own journey because I had also we had very similar experiences. And she's like, if more of us shared our story, less of us would feel alone. And at the time, she just turned 90, and I was like, man, I wonder if there would be a way to share. Have a space for stories to be shared that oftentimes don't get shared because there's no platform or place to do that, or we feel too afraid, or we need someone to
Yes.
maybe hold our hand in that. So every time someone says yes, I just think, wow, it's what an
Hmm.
amazing opportunity for us to communicate, but also for the listeners to hear your story and other stories and know that they're not alone in their own, that it gives them a bit of hope um, for them in their own journey.
Yeah, yeah, quite. I think that that's one of the great strengths of podcasts, actually, that you can find the thing that you want to hear. There are so many different types out there. I've just
Mm.
started a new podcast with my grandson. My grandson is
Oh,
12 years old. He's autistic. He doesn't go to school, but he's very verbal, unlike a number of people who are autistic. He loves to talk, and his name
mm.
is Nathaniel or Natty, we call him. So we've started a podcast called Chatty Natty, where
Aw.
basically we chat and we talk about things. But I talk about mostly his life, about
Mm,
what it's like to be a 12-year-old boy with autism, and
mm,
how he copes with it and or doesn't cope with it, and what it means to him in life, how it's different um, from people who would generally be called normal.
mm.
And I think that there are so many people who are not normal, uh, that it's often possible to feel very alone in that situation, to feel that you're
Yeah.
the only person going through it. So we started it largely because I think there are a lot of podcasts out there about autism and about um, all sorts of mental problems, but actually there are very few that are directly from the people who are going through it. So they will be
Mm,
talked about by experts, uh, and I think it's interesting to hear it from the point of view of the child.
yeah.
How does it affect him? What does he think of it? Does he think of it as a problem? Is it a
Mm,
problem to him? Or does he
mm.
just think that this is how life is? You know,
Wow.
and so I hope, hopefully, as we talk about things, and I try to do it in as gentle as way as I can. I'm not the inquisitor. I try to just talk about things that are going on in his life, and then see if the autism is affecting that,
Hmm.
and if it changes his attitude towards it from the way that most people would regard it. And it's really, so far, it's been really, really interesting. It's got a
Wow.
lovely response from people saying that it's so, it's great to hear a 12-year-old being so open about themselves, about their own thing.
Hmm.
Of course, that is one of the great joys of his autism, is that when he thinks something or feels something, he'll tell you.
Right.
He's not afraid or ashamed of actually saying, I'm frightened, or I don't
Mm,
like that, or I'm upset. He will let you know, and he will say quite often, I have to go. I can't stay here. This is awful. Whereas
mm.
we are all trained to put up with
Right.
life, as it were.
Yeah.
We're all told to be, to get on with it. A
Yeah.
stiff upper lip, get on with life and deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good argument to be had for
Hmm.
not getting on with it, for sort of saying, well, actually, no, why should you put up with something that you find unpleasant or frightening or disturbing? So maybe that's what I'll learn from it. But I'm hoping that it's me that learns from it, and
Hmm.
he's the one that does the talking.
Wow. What an amazing opportunity for him and for you to have those like really intentional
Mm,
conversations with him.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've always had them. It's
Hmm.
just, and I have over the years sort of occasionally just got my phone out and recorded them because I thought
Hmm.
it's extraordinary. This little boy is talking to me in such detail about these
Hmm.
things. And I've thought about it for a long time. And just recently, he was at a school and it was sort of working and then it fell apart, sadly. So he's not going to school. And I said, well, if you want a project, why don't we do that podcast that you've been talking about for ages? You've been talking about it, saying we should do it. I should do a podcast, Granddad. I should make a podcast. And I said, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm sure you'd be fascinating. And finally, I said, well, take the opportunity. So he said, okay, come on, let's do it. And he basically, of course, then meant now. Let's do it
Hmm.
now. So I went, okay. I grabbed some recording equipment, put it there, and I said, right, what do you want to talk about? And that's it. It's uh,
Wow.
it's very instant. It's very immediate. Yeah, there's
Hmm.
no planning at all in it. No organization. It's just we'll see what where well, very much like this, where the conversation takes us.
Hmm. It's a bit freeing to have it just like, we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it is more like life, isn't it? Life is like that. Life is not uh, preordained. So
Hmm.
I think there's nothing wrong with it at all. I think it's far more natural for people to talk in this way than it is for people to talk in a sort of a scripted way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the podcast is called Natty Chatty. Is that what it's called?
Chatty Natty,
Chatty Natty. Okay.
Chatty Natty
Okay.
podcast. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it is. We've done two episodes so far. We've got a few to go. We'll see where it goes. Really.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm definitely going to tune in. I'm very intrigued.
Yeah. Well, let me know what you think. I've been doing my other podcasts for uh, a long time now, over 4 years, well, 4.5
Wow.
years. and we do make 2 episodes a week. So I mean, I do
Wow.
podcasts quite regularly, and it's a very simple idea. We just it's called My Time Capsule, and I talk to people about 5 things from their life that they'd like to have in a time capsule.
Wow.
Anything at all from any time in their life, but they pick 4 things that they really cherish,
Hmm.
and 1 thing that they'd like to bury in the ground and forget, something they would,
Wow.
want to wipe from their life, as it were. And it's very interesting, the choices. Some people are flippant about it, which is fine, and it's very funny, and other people are intensely serious about it. And
Hmm.
that I've spoken to a lot of people from Great Britain, obviously, but I've spoken to people from all over the world, and it's
Wow.
yeah, it's interesting. But people generally, once you ask them the question, they go, okay, and then they really do start to take it seriously. They really
Hmm.
actually think about genuinely the
Yes.
4 things that they most love,
Hmm.
and that, of course, is a beautiful thing to talk to someone about.
Yes.
It's really nice. It's very simple, and people come up with the most extraordinary things, and they reveal things about themselves and about their history and their past that they would
Hmm.
never do normally. So quite often, obviously, because it helps the numbers, I talked to famous people. I talk to people I know in this country who are actors and writers and comedians,
Hmm.
and they've never been asked these questions, so they've never talked about things.
Wow.
So they talk about their childhood, and
Hmm.
you wouldn't normally ask them about those things.
No,
So
it's the things.
it's been a real revelation. I'm enjoying it.
Hmm.
We're just getting to the point now, after 4.5 years, where I feel that I can go back to people and say, you know, are you happy with the choices you made? Do you want to do
Hmm.
it again? And actually,
Wow.
nearly everybody who I've spoken to so far, that I've asked, they've said, yeah, 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 let's do it again. They're thinking about it. It's a friend of mine. There's a radio program in this country. I don't know if you know it, called Desert Island Discs, which has been
Okay.
running for, I think, about 70 years. It's a
Wow.
very, very old program, and it's had almost everybody famous from the history of famous people
Wow.
on it. And every week they come on and they pick 8 records that they would like to take with them to a desert island, and then they talk about why those records are important to them, what they mean to them, and
Wow.
why they represent. Usually, the record would represent a person or a part of their life that they'd like to remember.
Hmm.
And it's again, a very simple idea. But I had a friend on recently that I was talking to on my podcast who said the problem is, Mike, when you've done Desert Island Discs, anybody who knows the program at some point in their life will play the game. And I said, what game? He said, the Desert Island Disc game, where you say to people, well, which 8 records would you take? If you did Desert Island Disc, which 8 records would you pick? And you go, oh, well, I'd pick, Oliver's Army by Elvis Costello, obviously. That's a great song. That was when I was young. And then I'd pick a punk song. And, well, I might pick a song that my dad liked. And then you start playing the game,
Wow.
but you can change your mind anytime you like because it's just a game. But once you've actually been on the radio program, you've declared your 8 and you're
Hmm.
stuck with it. And people, you can't play that game anymore. You can't discuss which would be your favorite records because you've already told the world what they are, and they're sort of locked away and stuck there, and you're stuck with them. And
Hmm.
so in a way, I thought, so well, that's also true of my podcast. So I think I'd quite like to go back and say to people, actually, if you had another chance, are there other
Hmm.
things that you'd rather put in there? And, you know, given the chance, people have all gone, oh, actually, yes, yeah, I
Hmm.
forgot about this when I was thinking of them. So
Wow.
I think it's something that I will be able to re-explore, which is
Totally.
great.
I love that idea. I love the idea of the five, the time capsule, but also like the songs as you're talking. I'm like, what would like where does that take me? Like you said, like takes you back to your childhood. What songs were really meant something to you as a child in your adolescence and
Mm,
becoming a parent and just your dad's favorite song. Like it's interesting to think that way. I'm like, what a like beautiful idea.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's endlessly fascinating, I think, listening to people's choices and to seeing what they
Mm-hmm.
regard as important. I mean, clearly, some people will use it as an opportunity to promote something. So they will talk about something they've just done. But actually,
Mm-hmm.
most people are very honest about it, and they absolutely go back to, well, do you know what? It's this toy I had. I had it, or I had a bicycle, or I was once on holiday and we walked round the corner and there was a view of the bay which took my breath away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to have that, please. I'd like to
Wow.
keep that and preserve it. And you can do that. I mean, as I say to people, you can have a smell, you can have a sense,
Hmm.
a feeling, any of those, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's um
That's
it's
beautiful.
it's a very broad church that they're
Hmm.
picking from, but but it is fun. Yeah, yeah.
I
There
could,
we are.
I could,
Mm.
yeah, I could see that even being a beautiful thing to do with your family, with your, like for me, instance, for people who
Yeah,
are listening to for Christmas time, like this year we were like, let's make this year an experiential Christmas because nobody, we really don't need anything. You know, we have each other, we have our health.
yeah,
There's not
yeah.
really need for things, but
It's
to,
a lovely
yeah,
game. I have done it with my son, and
okay,
just and it is, and with my brother. It's very interesting to listen to the things that they really treasure from their life because they're not the same. You
yeah,
think, so, well, we grew up together,
yeah,
and yet they don't remember their childhood in any way similar to the way I
yeah,
do. It's a
yeah,
different experience. So
yes.
yeah.
I really love
So
that. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I'm
Play
gonna.
it with your family at Christmas.
I am.
Ask them. Say, go on, pick it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm gonna borrow that for Christmas this year. I really like that idea. That's brilliant. Wow. I feel like we could talk all day, but
Mm.
I guess when I asked you the question, the time in your life, and people always say, well, there's so many times in life when things changed. And I remember when I first met you outside in London there, and you're like, oh gosh, I've had quite a life. Where would I begin? But is there something that comes to your mind in this moment
Mm.
when, like, no, this is a moment for me that comes up when things really changed?
I think so. I mean, there are a number of times when, I mean, the genuinely honest answer would be the moment I met my wife, I think, because she has
Hmm.
absolutely affected everything that's happened in my life. To a large extent, most of my adult life.
Hmm.
She was 19 and I was 20, and we met, and we've been together ever since. And so, almost the person I am is as a result of that meeting.
Hmm.
I've become the person I am through her influence, I think, mostly. But if you're talking about, if I really had to think about a moment where I remember my life changing, and I specifically remember the day and the night, and waking up the next morning and thinking I am not the person I was yesterday.
Hmm.
And it wasn't anything terribly momentous. It was that I'd always, as a boy, and for several reasons, I was always sort of I was the comic person. I was the person there for to amuse people.
Hmm.
Um, so it's quite complicated. When I was a teenager, which of course is an important time in life. When I was a young boy, I loved to entertain. I loved when my dad entertained. I loved to join in with him. I had no qualms at all about jumping on a stage. I loved doing it, but
Hmm.
not in any sort of idea that I might do something. But then, as I went into teenage years, my father would do shows on a Saturday night for uh, I don't know, people of his age, and he would do sort of old time musicals and
Hmm.
have a group of people. They would sing. They had a pianist there. Everybody would come. They were great shows, but he encouraged me from about the age of 9 to join in. Come and sing a song. So I would sing it in my lovely little soprano voice, and then my voice broke, and I carried on singing, and I learned to sing, and so I would sing old time songs, really,
Hmm.
and I enjoyed it. But it meant that I would go to these events on a Saturday night, and then, having finished at about 10 o'clock at night, I would say to my dad, can you drop me at a party? And so all my friends would be having those teenage parties in each other's houses. And I would turn up at about 10 o'clock at night, and they would go on till midnight. Usually, parents would allow people to have a party till midnight, and
Okay.
then you all had to wander home through the streets, usually quite drunk. So I would turn up there. Most of them had had been drinking, and of course they'd also sort of paired off. Do you know what I mean? People had done the
Hmm.
flirting, and people were in couples, and things were already determined, you know. And I turned up as a single solo man. And there's another element to this, which is when I grew up in the 1970s as a teenager. And in the 1970s, the fashion was to wear platform shoes, or certainly built up shoes. And I would have been performing on stage in flat shoes. And
Wow.
then I was obviously usually so keen to get to the party, I quite often turned up to the party in flat shoes. So, in comparison to everybody else at this party, I was 2 or 3 inches shorter than I ought to have been because they were wearing great big platform boots. And so everybody towered over me. So I was known as Little Mickey,
Oh.
even though, in fact, when I think back on it, I'm about the same size as most of my friends. But I was known as Little Mickey because other girls, of course, wore great big shoes. So girls were always towering over me. And so they were these impossible things that you were never going to get near. And
Oh.
so I stayed in the kitchen and I made people laugh. And I told them silly stories and sang songs and stuff. When it
Hmm.
came to the slow dance at the end, I was always the only one in the kitchen. I was on my own. And I thought, and that was my teenage experience. And
Hmm.
I'd never had a girlfriend, although I
Hmm.
now look at photographs of myself as a teenager, and without any shame, I will tell you that I was gorgeous. I was absolutely gorgeous, and uh, and 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 the girls were making a big mistake not going for me. But obviously, why would they go for Little Mickey, the funny one?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it didn't happen. And then I finished my A levels, so my last exams at school, and a friend of a friend had said, "There's a party uh, that night. Do you want to go to it?" And it was at an army base. So I said, "Yeah, all right." I had nothing else to do. So it was a bit out of town. I got my father to drive me there, and I got dropped at this army base, and then I showed him the thing, went in, and there was nobody there, nobody that I knew, not a soul. I didn't know any of the people at this party, and there were lots of people there.
Hmm.
And they were all about my age, and most of them were celebrating finishing exams. So it was a completely new crowd of people.
Hmm.
And by that point, platform shoes had become obsolete.
Right.
And suddenly I wasn't little Mickey. I was
Hmm.
taller than the girls, and I was gorgeous. And I suddenly realized it. I
Hmm.
actually suddenly went, I, I think that girl is looking at me as if she fancies me. And
Hmm.
so's that one. And I said to someone, "Would you like to dance?" With yes, please. And I just suddenly became aware of the fact that I could be whoever I chose to be. That
Hmm.
actually the hand that life had dealt me, I could discard it and pick a completely new hand. And I knew that I was going off to university. I knew I was going to college. I was going to do some work, and then I was going to go to college. And I sort of saw my life ahead of me, and I thought, well, the path that I thought I was going to take, I'm not going to take it at all. I'm going to
Hmm.
be me now. I'm going to be this person, and uh, and it worked instantly. It was extraordinary. I've never been called Mickey since. I've
Wow.
always been called Mike, and I suddenly found that I had, I don't know, status, as it were, other than just as being funny. And I
Hmm.
continued to be funny, and I enjoyed the skill of being funny. I like it. I learnt it as a young person. I enjoy being funny, and I would still try to be. But I was also able to just stop being funny, and then, you know, and thankfully, when it came to me meeting my wife, um, actually, strangely, because although I've discovered that I had the power, when you're a teenager, you think you have no power. Teenage boys think there's no chance. Every now and again, you'll have a mate who, for some reason, thinks that every girl is going to fancy him, and you just can't work it out. because you know that the rest of you are thinking, why would they be interested in me? I'm spotty, awful, dreadful person with BO. Why would they be interested in me? And then and then you discover that they do. And actually, it was just the discovery that was enough for me. I wasn't
Hmm.
that interested in pursuing girls. I wasn't suddenly become some great Casanova. I just became aware that I could if I wanted to, and
Hmm.
that was power enough. It was if I chose to, I could go and talk to girls, and they would be interested. And
Hmm.
uh, and so I then decided, okay, well, actually, I think I want to be an actor, but I don't know how to do it. So I'll pursue the law. I'll go off to university. It will take me somewhere else. We'll see where life takes us. And it took me to Oxford and doing an enormous amount of theatre, enormous amount of
Wow.
acting in the time I was there. And by the time I came out, I knew what I wanted to do. I was ready.
Wow. Wow. So just going to that party that
Mm.
night and seeing yourself differently because nobody
That
else saw
one
you the
night,
way that,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, that like gave you something else to stand on.
yes.
Yeah. It sounds like that was the beginning of something, a whole new part of you just
I mean,
evolving.
it was like having a clean you've suddenly got a clean slate. You've wiped the
Yeah.
slate clean, as it were. You say everything that I've done up until this point, nobody knows anything about it. And
Hmm.
actually, sadly, to a large extent, it meant that I sort of moved almost instantly away from my school friends. The friends I'd
Hmm.
had at school, we stopped seeing each other. We didn't really spend much time together after that. And I liked them. I liked my school friends, but they never stopped seeing me that way. And
Right.
I thought, well, I'm not that person anymore. And
Right.
also, I then went off to university, and then I became an actor, and I went all over the world and did lots of things, and suddenly was mixing with other people that they regarded as famous, and so it became very difficult. It becomes very difficult to go back and just be the normal person that they know you to be,
Right.
without because they would talk about things, and I would say, "Oh yeah, I had a drink with them the other night," and it would just stop the conversation dead because the fact that I knew somebody famous meant that they couldn't
Hmm.
talk about that person in the same. It just didn't work. It was a shame. It was a real
Hmm.
shame. But of course I had a whole new group of friends who saw me differently, and I
Hmm.
think that actually my wife particularly encouraged me to do that. She would quite often, when she saw me slipping back into the young me, which I would do sometimes because it's safe,
Yeah.
she would say, why are you doing that?
Hmm.
Why are you pretending to be an idiot?" So, yeah,
It sounds like that was a bit of a catalyst for you. Like that moment was the thing that allowed you to see
yeah, yeah,
yourself differently.
yeah. I think it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? But
That,
when you ask the question, that's the thing that immediately came to mind. Is that
hmm.
moment in my life when I suddenly thought I'm not the person that I've been pretending to be,
Hmm.
and I'd rather be the person I know I am.
Hmm. That's really beautiful. I think a lot of us, um, I've talked to many people that have moved away from their towns or places where people have known them. And like you said, it's like you can reestablish who you are and let the part of you that maybe was just shrinking because people saw you a certain way, let that part actually come and blossom and lead the way a bit instead of it being tucked away because you feel like you can't because you are a little Mikey, and you don't have, it's like you can't get outside of the
Yeah, yeah.
box that people put you in, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I'd stayed that person, I would never have done the job that I've done. I would never have had the career I've had. So yes.
Wow. That is incredible. Um, when you think back to like younger self, so because I can imagine my dad went through something similar actually as a child. He had some bad experiences, ended up having a really bad accident as a child, being made bullied, and just saw quite in one way, like people just saw him as incapable as he grew because he had this disability, and then moving away and finding your own wings and finding your own, like, I can do these things, and not being limited by the minds of others. If you think back to like younger self,
Mm.
and for people who are listening today, is there something that you wish that you would have maybe known as a young boy, or as a 19-year-old coming out into that transition and letting that self really arise and be who you are, is there something that you would have wanted your younger self to know?
Um, yeah, I think probably the one thing that I would actually wish I'd known when I was young, because I think a lot of people, particularly young people, strive for it, is that it's impossible to make everybody love you. It's impossible to make everybody like you. Some people just won't, and it's
Mm,
almost inexplicable. They will take against you for some reason. And actually, the best thing in those situations is not to constantly pursue them and try to dissuade them from this loathing that they have of you, but just to accept it, just to say, okay, well, they don't like me. I don't know why. I'm not sure I can do anything about it, or it's not really worth my effort.
right.
Let them get on with their journey, and I'll get on with mine. And the idea, I would spend a lot of time trying to make people like me. And then I would also, for some reason, argue with people late into the night, trying to make them agree with me. I
Mm,
mean, if you don't agree with me, then it's in a way, it suggests that I'm wrong. Unless
mm,
I can get you to go, yes, you're right, Mike, that it means I'm wrong. And that's not true at all. You can have a lot of people disagree with you. It doesn't mean
mm-hmm.
you're wrong. It just means they don't agree with you. I
Yeah.
mean, a prime example of that is, I mean, Donald Trump doesn't give a damn what people think of him. Not a damn. He just doesn't care what anybody thinks of him. And yet, when somebody says something, I mean, clearly doesn't because he has no sort of seems to have any sort of sense of other people, no sort of empathy. He seems to
Mm,
have no empathy at all whatsoever.
yeah.
And yet, when somebody says, sort of in a way, slights him in the very smallest way, they can just write an article saying, the man's not as good as he thinks he is. He will never forgive them. He will
Mm,
bear that grudge
mm,
because I think he's a prime example of someone who really, if everybody in the world said we love you, he would go, that's it. That's what I really want. I really want that more than anything. And I know it looks as if, in fact, all he wants to do is control it. But I think what he's after is this is why I think it's why he has these enormous rallies, and they go on and on and on and on because he is largely surrounded by people who do adore him, and he can't get enough of it. He could, if he had the energy, he would stay there for days and days and days talking drivel, and them all clapping and laughing at everything he said, and going yeah, and every time he says something, they chant it back. It's like it's a drug, and he
mm,
can't resist it. And
yeah.
I find it interesting that somebody has got to that point in the world.
Mm.
Well, you can probably tell I'm not a great fan, but I thought I also
Yes.
I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by the you look and you see so many things that you saw in other people when you were young that
Mm,
were not good traits. But you would
yeah.
go, wow, you really care about that. And you go, all right, don't need to get quite so upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think he's a strange, strange man. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people love him. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So, am I right? Am I wrong? Who knows? But I'm now happy to accept that I might be wrong. And in fact, if I am, I am.
Yeah. I love what you said at the very beginning when you talked about pursuing art. Like you were like going to be a law in law, and then you got into the arts and started acting like, and I didn't do it for anybody to, I didn't do it for someone to applaud me. You weren't standing, you weren't going to sit there all night like you just talked about somebody, pumping you up. It was like, no, like I did it because I loved it. And that's the thing I think that a lot of us in
Yeah.
life, we get stuck in doing things that don't bring us life, that don't make us feel alive. And so we kind of just like shrivel
Mm.
in doing the thing so that we can get the thing, to buy the thing, to have the stuff. But it's not, the fulfillment's just not there. And we just find that we feel empty, and the world can feel empty, and people around us can feel empty because
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
never got to pursue the thing that made them feel
It's
alive.
interesting that you will hear people say you would feel you'd often hear people say things like, I bought a new dress today. And it's my thing, you know me with I can't resist it. It's I just love it more than anything in the world. Getting a new dress, and you go, really, is that the height of your ambition?
Mm.
Because I find there is so much that you can do in life. There are so many possibilities, and pursuing something sort of in a way that if you see that as the thing that will give you gratification, will make you happy, then it's a I don't know. I find it. I get the job that I'm very lucky. I know that to be true. I'm very lucky in as much as that I people say to me, how often do you work? And I sort of say, well, not very often. I hardly ever work. I don't regard what I do as work.
Mm.
I most of the time I love doing it. I run towards it. I get
Mm.
up in the morning. I've got something to do. I go, great. This is great. Let's go. I can't wait for it to start. And I'm disappointed when it ends. So for that to be the thing that is my work and the thing that actually earns me a living, I know that I'm in a fantastically fortunate situation. And I don't mean to decry people enjoying small things in life, as there are small pleasures are often the greatest pleasures. And even if I mean, I have made a good living. I've made a good living throughout my career because if you do the job I do and you do it well, you can get paid well for it.
Mm.
So I'm not, sitting in my ivory tower looking out and thinking everybody else is stupid. But I've never done the job. That's not true. Obviously I do jobs for money, but I've never made that the primary reason for doing it.
Right.
I've often chosen jobs that are much more interesting and much more exciting in my mind
Mm.
over jobs that would have paid well. Because I also know if I'd stayed being a lawyer, by now I'd probably be a judge, and I would be well off. I'd have a large house, and I'd have lots of savings. I'd have a great big pension. So if I'd really wanted just money, then I
Mm.
chose completely the wrong thing to do. I
Yeah.
so it was never I was never led by that. So I think I am very lucky in that sense to be in a world uh, where my primary aim is, oh, that's a great job. I'd love to do that, or I'd love to work on that, or I'd love to learn that skill. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I do think we ought to be, we should know that we're lucky, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that I heard somebody mention about a book they're reading. I can't think of it right now, but the whole premise of the book is that the wealthiest people are those with memories, these beautiful memories, that experiences we had, whether it's something small or something big. That memory is really, what we got to experience, whether it's just like taking in an amazing hug from your grandparent, or whether it's birthing a child, or whatever these moments, that if you can hold on to the memories, that's where the wealth is, especially if those memories bring you comfort and bring you to a place of
Yeah, yeah.
love,
I
for
mean,
being
I'm sure
alive.
that's true. I don't think anybody, yeah, yeah, I don't think anybody lies on their deathbed and thinks, "God, the size of that check, you know,
Right.
that was huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love what you're doing. Like,
Yeah.
I wake up and I don't. It's not many days I go to work because I literally love what I do, and I think that's a great message for everybody. To remember is like, do what you love.
Mm.
Find ways to do what you love, because you only have one life to live.
Yeah, yeah. Or find something to love in what you do, even. No, I mean,
Yeah.
no, not everybody is going to be as fortunate as me. Sometimes people just have to do things to get by to make a living. But I think you see some people who've not searched for the thing in what they're doing that they can enjoy, that they can love.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be if you work in retail, learn to love the fact that you are going to meet a lot of people. You are going to spend short, moments, but with all sorts of people, and try and use those moments. Use that thing of like, I mean, I enjoy meeting people. I like meeting people, and I think you can gain a lot from it. But I'm no great guru, obviously, because my life to a large extent has been very selfish. It's been, this is what I like and this is what I'm going to do. Whereas I may well have, if I'd looked at it seriously, gone, "Well, hang on a minute, I've got a wife and two children and I've got a mortgage. I should be concentrating on making enough money." But I never did. And I've been fortunate that I did make enough money. But I concentrated on doing the thing that I loved. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's the answer. Maybe the other will come as a
Mm-hmm.
result of it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I heard this girl story the other day. She just worked exactly what you're saying. She was working in retail, and she's like, I just wasn't feeling fulfilled. I felt really like how can I do something that I love? And she's like, I started to make a list for myself. It was 30 days of doing something creative. And she's like, it changed my perspective. I
Mm,
got out of work and I did some, whether it was making a new recipe or trying a new sport or like trying out a new workshop. She's like, I did something new for 30 days and it reset the way I saw my life and the way I saw my world. And she's like, it
hmm
impacted how I was at work because now I was bringing a different part of me here. I was excited about the things that I was learning and experiencing. And that part of me was now showing up for work. And so I wasn't going to work with the same mindset. It actually changed the way I thought about life. And now she's on like I think her a year of that now,
mm,
where she does something creative or new every day, and it doesn't have to be anything major. It could be planting a flower, but just something that you're doing that's new to you.
yeah.
That can be the joy, in those little things. No, I think when I think back to even conversations with my grandma and my conversation my dad had with his grandparents, I think, the world at that point had changed so much, and you're just thinking, how much more will this change? And I think the thing of it is that
Mm,
humanity just wants to connect and we just want to be seen. And it's very easy to be kind. Like you said, opening a door for somebody or making somebody a meal. There's so many beautiful ways to find purpose and meaning in life. And a lot of that goes under the theme of kindness. And I think if we can be more of that
mm.
and we can be less withholding, I
I
like
have
it.
great confidence and faith in the future.
I love it. I love it. Um, as we come to a bit of a close here, I
Mm.
wonder what's bringing you joy in your life at this season.
Um, uh, Family mostly.
Yeah.
Family, yes. Children, grandchildren. Spending time with them. I've spent all day with two grandchildren. Then we went off and spent more time with other grandchildren. So that's how I
Oh,
spend my day off. I spend my day off
oh,
with my grandchildren.
that's
So
lovely.
absolutely, that is the one thing more than anything else that gives me joy. So
Hmm,
yes, it's lovely.
that's beautiful.
Rather than you know pursuing my own pleasures, I
Yeah.
find that yes, I get a great pleasure from their pleasure. Mm.
Hmm, that's amazing. There is nothing quite as comforting as being with your family. And I imagine your grandkids are just soaking up all the time
Mm.
they get with you.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, I'll try and give them as much as I can.
Aw, that's amazing. Oh,
It's
that's
lovely
well,
to
is it
talk to you. Thank you very
it,
much for
no,
having me on.
it's thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your journey and your story. And I find it very inspiring, just like thinking about my own kids as they're embarking on their journey and they're in their early 20s and pursuing their passions. And it's just, I think that
Mm.
it'd be good for many people to hear this as they're pursuing life, whatever part they are in. I think that you have just a very inspiring story to lean towards the thing that lights you up and the thing that you love, and even just pushing through some hard things when maybe you don't get to do your
Mm.
favorite job but still finding joy in the process.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, good luck with this.
Oh,
Good luck with your podcast. Good luck with life
thank
and
you
your
so much.
family.
Take care.
Uh, and okay. Lovely to talk to you. See you.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too, Michael. Take care. Ciao. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcast goodness. This way you'll never miss out on any future episodes, plus it really helps us. And if you want to share your favorite episode with a friend, that would be absolutely incredible. This goes a long way. If you'd like to join Naked by sharing part of your story, just leave us a message on Instagram or email us at nakedwithjanelle@gmail.com. Also, a big thanks to my son, Mikkel, who is the best cheerleader and maybe one of the biggest believers in Naked, and also produces and edits all our podcasts. I am beyond grateful for him and very aware that I couldn't do this on my own. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being here.